Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Round of Sound. This is the 25th year anniversary of this program, the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. We thank you for joining us tonight. We have a lot to get into, including Pitt. Will they make it to the NCAA tournament? What will they have to do? We'll get into the quarterback situation with the Steelers and some other football topics, but the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Penguins and what they do at the trade deadline. And here to discuss is your panel tonight. We have from the Trib, it is Chris Adamski. In the middle, it's Mr. Chris Mack. Good to see you, Chris.
They still let me talk about sports sometimes, Pomp.
BetQL, baby, right?
That's right.
And that's right, money. Speaking of money, there you go. Andrew Fillipponi looking sharp tonight.
Chris's actually thing on the show is he just takes the opposite of what my picks are.
Yeah, and it works every single time.
He's a millionaire.
Been very profitable for the BetQL listeners.
Hashtag
All right.
Fillipponi works well.
We'll find out now about the Penguins in the coming week with Kyle Dubas. Pony, I'm going to start with you on this one. So Jake Guentzel, will he be a Pittsburgh Penguin member on March the 9th?
If he is, then Kyle Dubas screwed up, I think. He's got to go.
Yeah.
They're not going to get a long-term deal done. He rejected their offer before the season started. It sounds like they maybe tried to go back to the negotiating table around the All-Star break when they had all those days off. Nothing happened. The loss last night in Calgary, I think, was the death knell for them. They're not digging themselves out of this hole. He wants a huge contract. Rentals are much more, from a trade standpoint, you get a lot more in hockey than you do in the other sports like baseball.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think he's got to be gone. And you got to get a piece or two from that trade that helps you, not like 3 years from now, but how about next year when the Penguins try to run this back with Sidney Crosby and everything.
So in other words, prospects who are ready to play or people who are already on the roster.
I just don't
right,
want
Chris?
a first-round pick that's going to end up being the 28th pick
Right,
in the
and
draft.
you'll
And then
never
we've
see
got to
him.
wait another 3 or 4 years for that guy to have any kind of impact, which we don't have that kind
like
of
Sam Poulin, still waiting for him. When's he going to do it?
Right.
He's not good enough, Bob. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Bad pick.
Okay.
And we don't have that the luxury of time anymore with the remaining years of Sidney Crosby's career. Even if I think he's going to be like Brady and play until much longer than some people would suspect, you've got to build a young, talented base around him, and it can't be guys that we're going to have to wait 3 or 4 years for. Like Pony, I agree. Guentzel's got to be gone, whatever you can get. You know, going into tonight's game, 10 points back. You can tell me they have 5 games in hand on those teams they're chasing. Doesn't matter. You'd have to win all 5 of them to get to that point. They're not in the playoff race this year. So let's push past that. Let's get Sidney Crosby to agree to whatever you can get Sid, because Sid's opinion is important on all of this. And I say, Sid, we're going to try and move anybody 29 or older who isn't you and nailed down right now. So as long as you're okay with that, guys are going.
But Chris, you have so many roadblocks. Everybody has a no-trade clause.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
they're gonna
it's
have
like
to
even
be
the
in on
guys
this.
that Kyle Dubas signed this past year have no trade clause. It's crazy how everybody in the team pretty much has a no movement clause. I think there's a few things here. Guentzel, I think, typically in sports, when you trade somebody as a rental, they very rarely re-sign back. And whether it's hard feelings or whatever it is, it doesn't. But I think in this case, this is an exception maybe because of the Crosby relationship, because I think Jake respects that relationship too. I think Sidney Crosby respects that relationship. I think that everybody can see kind of the handwriting on the wall. I mean, you talked about the Calgary loss being the death knell. We've had about 5 or 6 of those losses, I feel like, in the past month and a half, where you thought that's it. The Islanders go over, the Kings game, whatever it is.
Arizona?
I think we've had way too many of them at this point. It's obvious it's done at this point. So I think he could come back. I do disagree. I think a first-round pick, because you're acquiring capital. I think Kyle Dubas sees things as capital, as marketable assets, and a first-round pick is an asset. Maybe you flip it again over the summer for somebody else. I don't see.
Yeah, but that doesn't
that's your
solve
best
the
offer.
next 2 years.
I mean, yes.
I
I don't know what can. That's the kind of the problem. It's kind of like the Eric Carlson thing last year at this time, or last summer at least, where I didn't think it was going to work, and it probably wasn't going to work, but it was your best shot. And if you're sticking with Crosby, and you're probably sticking with Malkin and Letang because you pretty much have to.
We spent a lot of this offseason talking about signings that Kyle Dubas made. One of them was Tristan Jarry, and at the time, a lot of people felt it was too much money and too long of a term. Looking back, I don't think that's been a problem at all. So, Andrew, would you trade him if you got an offer, knowing that you have this kid, Joel Bloomquist, down in the minors, who's playing pretty well? He's a young kid. If you believe in him, would you do that? Because $5 million a year for a good goaltender, I think, is doable for most franchises.
Yeah, I mean, Aiden Hill won the Stanley Cup last year.
He's good.
He's a good player.
You're making it seem like he's not good.
Well,
he's good.
Does he have any Vezina trophies in his
He's really good right now this
mantle
year.
right now? He's not going to win
one
it,
of the
though, Bob.
top-
There's a guy in Winnipeg who's having a pretty good year. But you get what I'm saying.
I'm telling you, okay.
Okay, let me ask you this question.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Well, I'm just going to we
I'm
can
just
go
saying,
back. Let's go
people
back.
make fun of that.
Well, I
Aiden Hill
understand
won.
you, but
Well,
let's go back and forth a little bit.
Well,
when was the last time Tristan Jarry won a big game?
He didn't.
Exactly. There's no record. There's no resume there.
Right.
You know, with some of these guys that they're attached to, there's Stanley Cups and confetti and parades and champagne and stuff. There's none of that with him. So he's had a very good year, solid enough. He's got all the shutouts, up and down at times. I mean, it's not like blow you away stats. He's been dependable. He's played. There are teams like New Jersey and Colorado that might need a goalie, that might overpay. Yeah, he's on the table.
Yeah.
And to Chris's point, too, you're going to free up, 4 more years and almost $5 million a year if you trade him. So, yes, I'm interested in dealing Tristan
You
Jarry.
got to strip away as much of the stuff around Crosby that isn't working right now. Not to say that Jarry isn't necessarily working. The guys in front of him have played like garbage.
Is what you're
Exactly.
saying, Chris.
I mean, if you're not a cup contender, what do you need that number one goaltender for? It's like having a closer in baseball. If you're not really a World Series contender, does it matter? No, it doesn't. So, yes, move Jarry. Like I said, anything that's 29 or older and not nailed down and not named Sidney Crosby, it's on the market.
And it has to
Letang
be.
and Malkin, though, won't be because Sid wants to play with them, Chris.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, but Malkin may be talked into it. I don't know. He's just, I just
Gino might
can't-
be closer to retirement
He
than
may,
being traded.
or he may just say, "Hey, I'll do yourself a favor. I'll go to a team that may need me." Who knows? I wouldn't rule anything out there because he's not playing very well right now. And quite
Do you
frankly,
think he wants to change, though, and uproot
No,
everything,
he
the one
doesn't.
organization
No,
he's known and
but,
played for
but
at
if he had a
36 years
chance,
old?
I mean, if this team is going in the direction we all think it's going, you know, is you would just want to round it out and that's it? Just play
I
here?
kind of felt like that's why they got the band back together when
I
those two
didn't.
guys
I
resigned.
think they legitimately felt they could win with these guys as long as they put people around them.
I think this week, if they haven't done it already, is an important time, like I said, to go back around to Sid. You're not dealing Sid. That's not what I'm about to talk about. But go to Sid and say, hey, Gino and Letang, like, we can get something for these guys. And talk to those guys, too. Hey, are you willing to waive your no-move clauses? Because we can rebuild this organization around Sid. And, Chris, maybe you finish your final
Elliot
few years in
Friedman already
Montreal.
said they won't even go to Rust and ask him about his no-movement clause.
Which is
so they're
ridiculous.
not going to those guys.
Yeah,
man.
it's
ridiculous. It's not happening.
It was
But,
great.
this makes it impossible to rebuild the organization around Sid. With all these
They don't want
no-moves,
to rebuild.
All right,
They want to retool.
We got to go. We got to go to break here, and when we come back, we will talk about football matters. The combine's going on in Indianapolis. What are the Steelers going to do at quarterback? It's a daily question we ask. We'll do it again next, right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. All right, welcome back. We're talking about the Steelers at the Combine, and a lot of comments coming out of there from Omar Khan and other observers, and it makes me wonder what they're going to do with the quarterback situation. You would think, based on their comments, Chris Adamski, that it's going to be Kenny Pickett, especially after Jeremy Fowler had a report today that said Arthur Smith had a nice meeting with him in Florida, and they seem to be, you know, on the same page, and they want to build around him. Is that the right way to go here at this point?
I feel it's a lot like the last segment we talked about. Like the Penguins would probably be wise to kind of strip it down and deal off, you know, Letang or Malkin, or whether it be sentimentality or whether it be sunk cost or whatever it is they're doing. I don't. We could sit here and debate it. We'll do it for a whole segment anyway. We'll probably do it next week too. But they're sticking with Kenny Pickett at least to the point where he's going to be on the roster and he's going to probably enter training camp unless something totally unforeseen happens as the starter and probably start week 1 almost certainly too.
So it doesn't matter if it's a competition. I know we've gone down that road before. If it's a competition, who's competing?
I don't
That's what
think the
wanna
Arthur
know.
Smith thing means that much. What happened in the meeting, I think that, again, Kenny Pickett's going to be on the roster, right? As of now, he's the QB1. He's the only.
He's the only one, so you had to meet
to
with him.
talk about competition the way Tomlin did at the end of the year. Don't tell me you want to provide competition and then not do anything to go out and provide competition. Not really chase after Justin Fields. You know they're not going to spend the money necessary to go after a Kirk Cousins, for example. Come on. I'm not
wouldn't do
interested
that
in
either.
Russell Wilson.
I would do Wilson over Cousins. Don't
Okay.
you think? It's a low risk.
It's not your money, Bob. It's okay.
Oh, I
to
know,
sign
but
Kirk
normally I
Cousins.
spend the Pirates' money. I'm not willing to do this because I think it's more money than.
But I mean, they're
I
not,
don't trust his knee
It doesn't
yet.
seem like they're ready, willing, or able to actually go out and provide that competition that they say they want to provide Kenny Pickett. Competition is going to come in the way of, I don't know, some 5th-round pick in the draft, or if Mason Rudolph doesn't get a legitimate offer somewhere else and comes back around. Like, Pony, this is more lip service. and like Chris just said, we're going to end up with Kenny Pickett starting week 1 again.
Well, I disagree with Adamski on one thing. I don't think Smith going down to see Kenny is nothing. I don't think Shane Waldron, who got the Bears offensive coordinator job, went to see Justin Fields.
Well, because they know Justin Fields isn't going to be their guy in a couple weeks.
What obviously is happening is there's not not mending fences, but there's a get-to-know-you session because they think they're going to work together. You know, if somebody's not looked at as your starting number one quarterback, I don't know if you reach, when you go to kiss somebody, Bob, someone's got to lean in first. I don't know if you do that if you don't think the guy factors into your plans. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to throw that. Jeremy Fowler put that in the story for a reason, because he thought it was significant that the offensive coordinator wanted to do an extended knowledge.
Because they know Kenny's going to be here. And so even if Kenny's working as a 1B to an established 1A, like a Cousins or a Wilson, or just competing with Mason Rudolph, I get Arthur Smith wanting to have some kind of rapport with Kenny Pickett. It's somewhere between nothing and a whole big deal. It's a little bit of something. It tells you that Kenny Pickett is still going to be here and have a legitimate shot at the QB1.
So we're running out of time, but Chris Adamski, I want to ask you about, you brought up Justin Fields. The market seems to be going backwards on him. If 3 years from now we're looking back at this and we find that the Steelers could have made a trade for him but didn't, and yet he turns out to be what I think some people think he can be, is this a missed opportunity potentially at this point looking at it?
I think, though, that going back to the competition, and I believe that they believe in the competition for Kenny Pickett, if you get a Fields or a Cousins, even a Russell Wilson to a point, or a Baker Mayfield, there shouldn't be a competition at that point. None of those guys are going to come here, and I know one of them's a trade, or at least one of them's a trade, and I think theory isn't it, but they're not going to trade for Justin Fields, have a 50-year option decision to make within a couple months, and not install him as the starting quarterback. That doesn't make any sense. So there wouldn't be a competition in that point. So to say even the 1A, 1B thing, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know. I mean, people are probably saying that in Carolina about Sam Darnold a few years ago, a high draft pick that wasn't working out in a bad team, and we'll put him in a good distance. I don't want to compare Justin Fields and Sam Darnold, but there's a reason why he's probably available, and I get it's not. And Caleb Williams being available is a big reason.
He's available because they got the number one overall pick in the draft. If they didn't, Justin
Fields
would still be the Bears.
Quarterback.
They did it last year too.
Moving on from him.
But they did it last year. Last year, the same exact thing happened last year.
Well, they kept Fields last time.
Yeah. So I'm just saying.
Bryce Young and Caleb Williams are not looked at as the same caliber of prospect. Caleb Williams is supposed to be Patrick Mahomes 2.0, which makes it quite a bit different, in my opinion.
All right, the other thing is Deontay Johnson. His name has been mentioned as a possible trade situation. He has 1 year left, I think, on a contract. He signed Chris Mack. And would you do that knowing that they want to build around Kenny Pickett or whomever they have here? He seems to be a productive receiver, not last year withstanding no touchdowns, but he gets open and he does some things when he gets the ball.
Yeah, I mean, Pickett seems to have a little bit of a rapport with him. Rudolph seems to work with him well also, if Rudolph's going to be back. I mean, I'm not going to let myself be talked out of trading for Deontay Johnson. Depends what the return is. But this team doesn't have anybody else ready to step up into that. I consider him the wide receiver 2 on this team. Pickens should be 1, even if he doesn't get more targets than Johnson. They don't have somebody who can step into that role immediately. And I think you've got to know you have that draft pick in hand, that guy that can come in and be that before you go trading Deontay Johnson.
I mean, the draft reporting was very interesting that they met with Rome Odunze, and then you had Ian Rappaport say that they're a trade-up partner, and the other guys they met with are players that you wouldn't think would even be available.
A lot of good wide
20th
receivers,
pick.
for sure.
They don't even have a wide receiver 3 right now. You do trade your second wide receiver. You don't have a third wide receiver. I mean, Allen Robinson.
So, Chris, you think they're going to extend Deontay Johnson then?
That's kind of the problem.
Well, what do you think? I'm asking you. Do you think they will?
I don't think they'll extend.
Well, then, so he's going to he's going to be a holding it in
yes,
camp.
you're right.
And he's going to be in a run-first offense. He is going to be a pain in the rear end that he's not getting the ball all the time because he needs it for money, right? I mean, let's be honest with each other here.
Yeah, and he looks like last time he signed, he took a cheap offer comparatively.
And what are they doing with Allen Robinson? Did they not cut him because they wanted NFL Network to say we have the Steelers' Allen Robinson as an analyst here? I mean, that makes no sense. Seriously. No, I mean, they're paying him, what, $9 million?
Almost $10 million.
But if they're going to be a trade-up team, Pony, this is not a trade-up for a wide receiver team. That's a luxury for this team right now with Johnson still on the roster. This is a trade-up for a keystone left tackle kind of team.
And I would do that. My focus
I would do because this is a stacked.
You could say that, but I mean, everyone said the Bengals should have picked Sewell over Jamar Chase because they had 2 wide receivers.
Right.
How'd that
fair?
Interesting.
Turn out.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Pitt, they won last night. How much more winning do they have to do to get into the NCAA tournament field? We'll talk about it next, right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. All right, welcome back. Talking about college basketball. Soon we'll have Selection Sunday and then an NCAA tournament. But first, Pitt has 2 home games left You would think they'd have to win both and then go on a run in the ACC tournament. Andrew, how many games do they have to win in the ACC tournament to get in? And should they be? It looks like they're better than Virginia. They moved ahead of them in those net ratings. Yet Virginia is up higher than them in the ACC.
Barely. According to the bracket.
But Virginia looks like they're going to get in.
Well, if you go by Joe Lunardi and Jerry Palm and these guys, but they're hanging by a thread too. It's weird. Last year we heard it was all about the net rankings and not conference record. Now Pitt has a better net ranking and beat Virginia at Virginia, and they still have Virginia in over them. So who knows? I actually think they're closer than the experts think.
2 tournament wins?
Well, I think the net ranking thing is a big deal. And if they win, and as Capel laid out this week, if they win these 2 games and they're blowouts, they win both games by double digits, they can move up like 10 spots in the net ranking. And if they're in the 30s in the net ranking, they are not going to get left out of the NCAA.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In my opinion.
But
so it might only take 3 wins is what I'm saying.
But blowouts are
These 2
important.
and then an ACC tournament win.
Never used to be blowouts are important, Chris Adamski, but they are now.
This net ranking thing, Capel sort of, I say debunked it, but sort of talked about, we might be going an ugly spot here. He's talking about gaming the system now. The Big 12 teams have been doing that scheduling, getting rid of tough non-conference games, which seems to go against what the net ranking would be mathematically, but apparently it's not. We look at the teams that have high rankings, and the Big 12, they all kind of conspire to get together that way. Like, I don't know where it used to be simpler. I feel like before they had the net ranking 15 years ago, I think we were talked about a 21-win ACC team will get in the tournament no matter what.
Right.
So now
We
the
always
net
looked at
ranking thing
wins,
clouds
right.
everything.
Yeah, I do think, though, there's always been a talk about conference hierarchy. And whether we're talking about net rankings or just how good the teams in a conference are and how deep those conferences are, like you don't need a net ranking to tell you the Big 12 is deeper and stronger than the ACC. And so, unfortunately, that's going to hurt Pitt. That's going to hurt Virginia or any other ACC bubble team. I think they've got to win the 2 final regular season games, and then I would feel comfortable if they won 3 at the ACC.
Is there one team that you can look at and say, this team going into the NCAA tournament is the team to beat? Would it be a Purdue? Would it be, is there a team out there? I think
UConn.
It's wide open.
UConn
can be beat.
Hard to pick again.
UConn, well, anybody can be beat.
I think
Bob.
Kentucky. I'm going to tell you, Kentucky.
They just gave up 100 points
and
to
they
Arkansas.
score 120. They can do it in that situation.
They can get to a certain point, Bob. They can't. They could get to the Elite 8. That's about it.
Okay.
They're going to have to play defense at some point against the team that can, play defense against them.
Well, give me a team to watch, real quick, down the 3 of you.
So you stole Kentucky would be my choice, actually. Sorry,
Okay.
Chris.
That's all right.
But my second one is actually Creighton, who beat Connecticut.
Yeah.
Creighton, good team.
And looked good last night,
I mean,
too.
I mean, UConn's the defending champs, and they've been, I don't say the best team from start to, you can't pick Purdue, right? No one
But
can
you
pick
can't
Purdue
pick Connecticut either
until they
because teams
pick.
don't repeat. Florida's the last team
it's
that
hard
went
to do
back
it.
No, I picked them at
right.
the beginning of the season. UConn's going to repeat.
Everybody's flawed. That's
okay.
sort of the.
So.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what the NHL should do and what college football might do when it comes to postseason. Next. All right, March 7th, 2009, Pitt upset number 1 ranked UConn for the second win against a number 1 ranked opponent in school history. We are showing you this because it's part of 25 years of doing this show. We talked about it then, and we'll continue to talk about Pitt as they try to make an NCAA tournament. They beat them twice that year, number 1 team. That was a very good team for the University of Pittsburgh. Now let's talk about college football. Already we're hearing people say 12's not enough, and you need more. We haven't gotten to 12 yet. Is 12 enough to do a college football playoff?
I've had it funny for all of our entire lives up until like 2012. We were told that there's no way they could do any playoff at all. Right. That it was 4. It's like no matter what we're doing 4 for 12 years, it doesn't matter what. And here they went up to 12 teams, and now 12 hasn't started yet. You're right, and they're going to 14. I thought the symmetry of 12 having the 4 teams, the bye, the 4 conference champions, it added value to the conference championship games. I like these next 2 years, the format it is. Now you just got these 3 automatic berths in a conference.
Yeah, that's stupid.
There's no round robin play in the conference.
Then just eliminate
good.
12's good.
Yeah.
I could take 16 because then it gets your top teams home campus games in the first round. They're not going to get those. The 4 teams that get buys now won't get those campus games. They'll go straight to bowl sites. So 16 would be fine, but don't give me automatic qualifiers. Then get rid of the conference championship games. They're meaningless.
Pony.
I honestly think it's the bigger story here is if the SEC and Big Ten don't get their way with this, I wonder what's going to happen to college football, because if the other conferences say, no, we don't want to do it this way, we want to keep it at 12, or we don't want to give you more automatic bids than us, I think those 2 leagues could just say, all right, fine, we'll just do our own thing.
Yeah.
All right, real quick, I have less than a minute here. We see a play-in game tournament in the NBA. That is 7, 8, 9, 10 Those guys meet, winners advance. You end up with a 7 and 8 seed. Should NHL do that?
Generally, I'm against watering down of the postseasons. I don't like it in any of the three sports they've done because it's just like the regular season is especially, I mean, the baseball regular season now is meaningless to me. But that being said, in hockey, I do kind of, you know, if you had a sudden death or a one game. Yeah,
or two
one-game
games,
situation,
depending on what you're playing.
it would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
It'd be all right.
I'm a sucker for contrived drama, Pom.
Yeah.
Give it
So
to me.
you like one game?
Give me the one game scenario. Think about what we're going to get in the Western Conference of the NBA this year. We're going to get the Lakers against the Warriors in a do or die game.
It's terrific.
Give me that in the
It worked in the
NHL too.
NBA. Do you like it?
Sure, but you know, in this scenario, Jake Gensel would probably remain a Penguin, right? Because they would just ride it out.
Yeah.
They would
Tying
trust
it all
the
together, the beginning of the show and the end of the show.
They try to get a 10
that.
seed all the way to the Stanley Cup.
circle.
Bob.
Maybe so. That's right. That's a good point in this case. All right. You know, to earn a great nickname, you got to do things bigger and better, and that describes all 4 #1 Cochran Ford stores. They're called the Ford-tastic 4 because customers can enjoy 4 times the pricing power, 4 times the selection, and 4 times the thrills. Plus, get limited time offers right now. The Ford-tastic 4. They have it all, so visit any of the 4 #1 Cochran Ford stores today or online at Cochran.com. It's been fun. We are done with tonight's show. A big thanks to Andrew Fillipponi, Chris Mack, and Chris Adamski. Big week this week. It is the NHL trade deadline. We'll have a lot of coverage coming up all the way until March the 8th. That's this weekend. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. We'll do it again soon. And we'll see you again next Sunday night right here at 11:35. Have a good evening.